So to really draw out story of others, which I do love doing, you have to listen and then be inside the conversation. If I'm hosting something like a podcast or a streaming series or whatever I have my hands in, and I'm thinking about a line of questioning, sure, I need that because it may be a live series, or it may have a timestamp that we really need to stick to. So I'm going to have a plan.
Yeah.
But that script has to be ready to be thrown out. By being engaged in the conversation, people will tell you what the next question is in a lot of ways. Ironically, I have interviewed Kathy Lee many times now, and she's a great interview because I don't even have to have a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I need one question and it'll go 1,000 different directions. But I always think about that when my dad said that. But that perks my ears to go, oh, be interested. But I don't think Kathy wasn't interested, and I don't think other people are interested. But don't you're really the servant personality rather than the dominant personality there. To kind of, yes, you're in control, but you're being willing to be engaged in the moment.
Welcome to the Americus podcast, where we pursue what it means to become a next level neighbor, creating a place we enjoy with the people we love. I'm your host, John Schroeder, and today I am joined by Andrew Greer. Andrew is a songwriter, author, and documentarian whose creative work has reached national audiences. He has written and edited several books, including the newly released More Than a President, Sunday with Jimmy Carter, and he is a filmmaker behind Plainspoken, the documentary inspired by the lives of Jimmy and Rosalind Carter and the people of Plains, Georgia. Though a Texas native who spent many years in Nashville, Andrew now calls Plains home and has become a thoughtful voice in our region, helping tell the stories of this place and its people. Andrew, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Yes, thank you, John.
Pretty good intro, right?
Great intro. It definitely squared me up in the middle of Sumter County, which is what I'm most proud of right now. So,
absolutely. So we were just talking about just kind of your travel, kind of coming in, going out, kind of what's life like for you right now?
Well, it's interesting because part of my move to Plains was about pace and about people, about knowing my neighbor, being known by my neighbor. And that requires being home to be known. And so I've lived the bulk of my adult life as a musician, as a songwriter, and even in some of my work with books and film, traveling, right? You know, when you do a project of any sort, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's written words, you've got to tell somebody about it. And so that requires being on the road. And while I love people, I love diversity, I love meeting people from different regions with different thoughts, different backgrounds, and connecting with them through the medium of art. I have really desired over the last 2 or 3 years of my life to be at home more. So right now, with the book having released on President Carter's birthday, October 1st, and here we are towards the end of the year, I have been gone a lot and a lot more. Yeah. I'm thrilled about it. Yeah. But I have also learned I am no longer 29, nor am I 35. I mean, I'm 42 and it's like, here I am. Yeah. You know, so, but I think part of my ache when I'm gone is because I have found in Plains, in Southwest Georgia, in Sumter County, a new way of being that is more like what I grew up with in a small town in Texas.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, I mean, you come from a small town.
That's right.
And then you go to the big stage, right, in Nashville, and there's people everywhere. And I mean, did you always feel that you were a part of the kind of the large crowd scene, and or did you always want to kind of find that small town feel?
Well, I wasn't looking for it, that's for sure. I tell people I didn't divorce Nashville. There wasn't something wrong. It's just I got to Plains and there was just this, room in my heart called Plains, and they gave me the key, and it opened wide open. To answer your question, I grew up in a smaller town in Texas, parents who had what I would call metropolitan professions. My dad's a marriage and family therapist. My mom, an organist who eventually became a music educator.
Oh, wow.
But they chose, at least from what I understand, asking them this question now as an adult, is they really chose where they lived. My dad really especially wanted to work with people and couples and families in that kind of more close to the earth setting, that rural setting. He wanted to work to help his neighbors, which I now learn as a therapist that there's a great burden to actually knowing the problems of the people you go to church with, the people who are your kids' teachers. You're that close in proximity in a small town. But I really loved that. I loved my parents' lives that they built for themselves and for my brothers and me. So I think it was always in me. I thought moving to a smaller town was probably something I was romanticizing as a single guy with no kids. Would that really be viable for me? But I got to test it out, through filming Plainspoken, which was a few years process. I didn't have to guess.
Yeah.
I knew after a while that I had found a community that I felt I belonged in. And over time, they confirmed I did belong and that there was space for me.
Yeah.
And so I definitely am an introvert.
Yeah.
So big city, lots of noise. While I enjoy being able to express art to a group of people, to a crowd, to an audience, sure. But I really like quieter places.
So I'm a little interested with your father. So being a therapist, did you feel that growing up? Like, oh, dad's doing the thing again.
I'm being counseled right now. I'm being
what was that? What was that kind of dynamic? It was like, I want to get away from all of this because I feel like I'm always kind of underneath the microscope.
I'm sure many therapist children do experience that. My dad is a great person and he was a great father first. Now, do I think some of what made him a good therapist also helped him be a listening father and a father who had, could listen to something and then advise well or hear or repeat back what you're saying. For sure we received counsel from my father, but no, I didn't feel like I grew up on the couch, sitting there being analyzed at all. In fact, and sometimes I wish my parents had given more input. I really, really respected their perspectives, but they really respected us, my brothers and me, as individuals who needed to grow into our own skin, into our own thoughts, into our own beliefs, and therefore were not real heavy-handed with their own opinion.
Where were you in the order of siblings?
You guess. There are three of us.
I'm not. Probably, you have to be either the middle child or the youngest, I would think.
I'm the youngest for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. Everything about my life is a youngest child. I do what I want to do when I want to do it. So yes, absolutely. I'm the youngest.
Okay, so your mom, musician, right? Did you grow up thinking about that? Was that always your career path, your desire, or were there other things and you just kind of fell more into music over time?
No, music was very pointed for me, and I felt like I found a language, at a very young age. Through piano first. Like many people, I learned music on the piano, learned how to read. And my mother's love of music certainly was influential in our entire family. My whole family loves music, but I was the only one who kind of took, as far as ran with it on my own. I couldn't do anything else. They had to tell me to stop playing, like now's the time to shut it down. I loved the access music gave me to myself, number one, to my own ideas and thoughts, the places that take some courage to express. Authenticity, I guess, is what transparency with ourselves. Music gave me that, but it also gave me the opportunity to shoulder up with others. When I think about some of the really intimate spaces I've been afforded to be a part of in people's lives and their hardship and their obstacles and their journey, the dark nights of the soul. I think music is what has cultured in me a kind of a breadthiness to be able to hear someone's pain, hear their story, the darker parts of it, and one, not be shocked, and two, not be overwhelmed by it. I think music and art to some degree allows us or expands within a space for others and their journeys.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been encouraged, the idea of our brains, left brain, right brain, that mentality of our right brain is more nonverbal. It's storytelling. It's narratives. And so it always kind of goes through that filter first, and then we begin to think critically through that. And so when you're talking about, things like music and sound and visuals, it's telling a story non-verbally that you get to better articulate through that process. And I just think that's, it's giving people, not necessarily words, it's giving people a way to experience and express that's nonverbal. It's a very beautiful thing is what you're, and so,
it's
for
sanctuary to some degree.
That's
I think
right.
That's what you're describing.
Yeah.
It's a safe space.
So, and we definitely need more of that. I've always been surprised over the last, this has probably been a while, but I feel like even with schooling, in schools and education, they've kind of divvied away more from the arts and focused more, maybe like everything's about sports here. If you're a sports player,
That's
you can make
South.
it.
Yeah, I grew up
and
in
it's
the
just
South.
like, man, the arts though, because there are people that are designed to communicate and to articulate and to grow in areas of like art and music. And I wish we could do more of that, right?
In pastoring, I think about your profession and your calling and your ability to tell our stories while incorporating this, huge, broad, grand, colorful, beautiful, wild story that is a part of driving all our stories. That's the beauty of I think good pastors are all about story. And again, shouldering up with people's stories and also expressing again that kind of deep layered story of Jesus that intersects with all of our stories.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, because part of that is, there's a natural probably ability for some of us that says so for example, some people they have to read music in order to play it. Some people can just hear it. And so they can't really tell you specifically how they figured that out. But when you're talking about telling stories, kind of going into that framework, do you have a system in place that helps you to tell stories, or did you work through a system, or is it kind of more natural? You can't really explain how stories are kind of unfolded in you and to articulate it to others.
I think there are elements that help the story surface. I think space and solitude are an important part of the creator's journey to telling story, to finding, discovering, and sharing story. I think a heightened sense of self, awareness of self, which can be troublesome too. It can turn into narcissism. It can also turn into, my temptation or my leaning would be towards melancholia. Like the longest and most in-depth playlist on my Apple Music is called Sad. That's all it's called. And so, but when needing to get in touch with myself or get in touch with story, find story, and because I'm needing to exorcise it, I will take a long drive on back roads with that playlist or put it in my earbuds while going for a long hike. And so, I don't think there's any science or there's no math equation for it for each person that's different. But where do we find space to be in tune with our own thoughts and feelings? That will help us also be in tune with others' thoughts and feelings. So whether we're crafting our own story or we're helping to craft and tell someone else's story, I think those things are important. And we have a pretty noisy world. Yeah. Probably always have. Our brains are noisy, and then we create the things in the world. So, Godspeed to all of us. But I think that's part of the contrast as we live in this high energy, geared up, keyed up world, and yet where we find ourselves, where I believe we find our connection with God, that allows us to access our story so that we can then relate and communicate with others, is in quiet and solitude and space.
Yeah. And that's like you said, I think that I'd love to talk a little bit more about this because this has been on my heart for the last probably 5 years. This idea of, I took a sabbatical for 3 months and I had been doing ministry for 13 years. And during that time, I didn't realize how much, I guess for lack of a better term, stress I had been under. Mm-hmm. And then when I didn't have those responsibilities, that weight on me, I was like, man, I feel a sense of, rest. It's okay. Like the world can go on without me, and that's a good thing, right?
Yes,
and then when I got back into, just everyday life, ministry, whatever it was, I started to feel that tension of like, what does that feel? That's anxiety. Like that's stress, it started to come back on me, but you kind of live with it for so long. You don't know it exists. Mm-hmm. And now we have things, we have monitors on our bodies that tell us when we're stressed or when we're, we have all these things.
It stresses us out more.
Yeah, right.
To read it like I'm stressed. Oh my gosh, I'm stressed.
But it blows me away because we need machines to tell us how we feel.
Yeah,
that's what I'm getting back to. That's like when we get to a place where we can slow down, we can actually know what we feel without something else telling us that.
But do we want to know how we feel?
That's that vulnerability, right? That's what I'm talking about. That's a scary place to be.
It's scary and it can be painful. Mm-hmm. If we slow down enough to actually realize we are anxious, I don't even take a deep breath, things like that. It can, in the short term, produce a little more anxiety, and fear about what we can't control, but sitting with it long enough to kind of surrender to our feelings, relax around them. It just takes time. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
And we really like quick fixes. Mm-hmm. And the things that ail us the most take time. I remember one of my friends, she heard about a lady who had lost her husband a few years prior. And this lady's friend that communicated then this story to my friend had said, how are you doing? And she said, oh, I'm just kind of barely getting by. And was kind of astonished by like, whatever, 2, 3, 4 years in, you're still barely getting by. And this woman said, I guess with grief, the time it takes is the time it takes. Mm-hmm. And that is not a part of our vernacular these days to take our time around something, to recuperate from a simple illness, have a knee surgery, and you need to, stay put for 3 months. That just doesn't even compute to us, even though it is for our own good.
Yeah.
It is for our health. We are so adverse to what it is that is best for us. So it takes a training. It takes a thinking, shifting, and all that takes energy, time, letting go of what our priorities are and ideals are in this current infrastructure, and realizing what are true priorities and true ideals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't have any perfect equation.
No, I don't, and I don't either. And I think, as you mentioned, I mean, we live in a world where if we can make up time, then we just use that to do more instead of, I remember reading a book on rest. It was talking about how, with all of the advancements in technology, the idea was, with the internet and all these things, we can do things twice as fast. So now we can actually have more time to rest. That was the idea. Now we can rest because we can do things twice as fast. Well, the quota started coming in. We're like, we can do this more. And so instead of actually resting with all this technology, we've just learned to do more. And I don't think that's ever going to stop. And so that's the turmoil nature that we're in is, if we could do it faster, it doesn't mean we're going to have more time. It means we're just going to keep doing more. And how do we get out of that cycle?
Well, Sumter County is one antidote.
Yeah.
Being among people who go home at night, being among people who do shut the doors and turn out the lights and take a day to be closed. I think of a certain restaurant. I was thinking maybe I was about to name it, and I'm like, well, this might be like kind of indicting. But I don't really know when its hours are, and they shift so often, and there's, I'm sure, reasons for that. It's kind of charming. At first I was frustrated about it, and then I was like, more power to them.
Yeah.
Apparently it still works on your bottom line.
Yeah.
So, and it's good for me to roll up to somewhere I want something now and it be closed. That is good for my own character, developing humility and patience and loosing my grip on entitlement. So I think smaller communities can actually develop a lot of perspective. It's funny because smaller communities get a bad rap, especially in the South, for holding on to old ideals or being traditional or, whatever the stereotype is. I have found it to be the opposite. I've found, while sure, maybe on the outlook, a small town's broad politics or something could maybe be fairly stereotypical. But when you get down to the individual people and the families and the neighborhoods, it's pretty diverse in thought. And there's a lot of free thought too, in the sense of willingness to learn new things, challenge prejudices and biases, and I don't know, to think through it. I really have seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I feel like I was built for small towns, I mean, I love big city. I am more of an extrovert. I like, I get energy from people, but when we moved here to Americus, I said, man, this is my town. I love it.
Yeah.
It's been good for my soul. We're describing rest and, this idea of becoming vulnerable. Man, it, like you said, it doesn't seem safe initially, but then you learn its pattern. You learn it's a way of life is what you're trying to get to. And I remember too that I learned that been working a lot with emotions, by the way, too. I mean, there's so many great things when you start kind of processing all these. God's given us emotions. We see them as kind of negative and positives all the time. Like, to be sad, obviously, is a negative emotion. To be happy is a positive emotion. To be fearful is a negative emotion. But when you look at it, fear is something that's given to us. So if I'm afraid of sticking my hand into an oven to pull out something because it's hot, that's not a negative emotion. It's a neutral emotion that helps me to decide two things. Either I'm going to use it in a positive way to be wise,
make a good decision,
a good decision and pull it out with, some pot holders or whatever, or it's going to cause anxiety in me and it's going to freeze me up. So fear is actually kind of a neutral position. But wisdom comes, what am I going to do with that fear? Am I going to make a wise choice, or am I going to let this fear control me? Therefore, anxiety and worry kind of come from that.
Sure.
But I even think about the idea of joy, and then here goes a little pastor in me, but James says, count it all joy, my brothers, right? So what he's describing is, he's not saying that your situation is good. He's saying it could be really, really bad, but I want you to count it. I want you to add joy to it. And sometimes we think we can't be joyful if we're sorrowful. But what scripture is saying is you can be joyful and sorrowful at the same time. Now, that is a hard thing to wrestle with, but that's what's actually given us an opportunity to say, hey, I can go through emotions and add joy to it. So how do I do that? That's the wrestle that I've been going through all my life. And so, but it's a beautiful picture because it allows us. So for example, even with something like grief, we're experiencing, I always say grief comes in waves, and that's why it's not like, that's what I mean. You can't, I'm just going to shut it off. This one thing is, and then I'm done. It's like, it just always comes. It's like a wave, but I think grace comes in waves too.
Well,
and so I would love to hear your thoughts on how to just kind of process, because you're talking about emotions, music, art. How do you process emotions and just kind of way of life?
I do pay a therapist.
Yeah.
That is a part of it. Our human nature does resist, feeling. Emotions are so layered. So it is that onion thing.
Yeah.
And it takes time to peel back the layers. It's easier for me to continue interacting out of my cyclical toxic behavior for some reason than it is to sit still, stop behaving badly, and just think through it, listen, confront it, find a new infrastructure and adhere to it. We would think, I would say there are rare personalities that do well with this. They're not the feeling types. My mother is a very sweet woman. She is not, I would say, she's not ruled by her emotions for sure.
Yeah.
But if something doesn't feel good to her, she just stops doing it. I remember one time I had put I think I was in college or right out of it. So I wasn't making much money and I didn't have much money. And I was going to visit family in Wyoming. I think that's right. Somewhere that I had to get a flight for, and I couldn't afford the flight in that moment. So I put it on my credit card and I was going to pay it off the next 3 months or whatever. It's probably a $300 flight and I'm going to pay it $100 a month. So I ended up paying $325 or something, right, with interest. And I remember somehow I was expressing that to my mom, not thinking anything about it. And she said, well, something like, do you want me to, I can give you a loan and then you can pay back. I'm like, Mom, I'll just pay a little interest on it. It's fine. And she was like, how do you sleep at night? I was like the rest of America, one, but she just she has that ability to go, well, that's not good for me, so I won't do it. I'm like, that's not good for me, but it feels great right now. Give me more. I mean, I am, and maybe that's because I want to feel too much and not challenge, where I am and all of that and actually think through it. I just want to feel instead of think through my feelings. But I don't think there's any perfect way to process it. I've found rhythm, the older I get, rhythm and routine in my days. I do need to be quiet in the morning. So if I have an early morning, I got to get up earlier, which means I got to go to bed earlier to do the things I need to do. To have space in the morning, I need to read. I need to read things that I don't love reading too. Like, for instance.
Tell me about this.
Going into, I am OCD in that if I start reading something, I have to finish it even if I hate it. So that's not a good example. But I have always loved scripture and always felt an affinity for it. I, like many thinkers and older millennials and whatever, all the things I all my IDs, the Old Testament is beautiful in parts and really intriguing in parts, but I just don't really think it's great in parts. And so I started reading, my brother was telling me about a way, you'll know the word for it, but it's reading through parts of the Bible really slowly and thoughtfully. It's like lectionary divini or lectio. I don't remember. Okay. It's an old tradition.
Okay, yeah.
And it doesn't require any aid or commentary or devotional or anything, but you can read it at will, however you want. So I began just by picking one of the Gospels, and it took about 6 months for me to read through it. And the idea is if you find something intriguing, or you want to read back over something the next day, or you want to go verse by verse, you want to go chapter by chapter, it's all up to you and your rhythm. And then I went to like Jonah, because I do love Jonah in the Old Testament, and then Ecclesiastes, because I still don't know what it's about. But then I was like, I need to read some stuff that I don't like to read in it, because maybe there's some shaping to do through that. And so I started with Joshua, which is in the Old Testament. The war books, is what I kind of call them. And I hate war. I think and I do not mean any disrespect to anybody who's, had to enter into war. But I do think it is man-made. I think it's political. I think greed is behind all of it. And so I think it's a waste. It's a waste. It's not our calling as human beings. It is not how we were designed to interact. And I always think if the men and women who wear suits and crowns would just sit down and talk, we wouldn't have young men and women with their lives gone. So I look at these Old Testament stories, and it's like, the Joshua in Joshua and the people of Israel and stuff, and they are winning, but as a result, they are slaughtering. I mean, there are people just dying left and right. I don't know what all that means. And I still don't know what it means. I got through Joshua slowly, and I'm like, I don't know. And I read some commentaries from some people I really respect, and I still was like, I don't know. But it's good for me to think through it in different kinds of ways. And it takes me back to, and then we can get back on whatever topic you want to get on. But I believe it was Madeleine L'Engle who wrote Wrinkle in Time, and who was a professing Christian. And in some interview, she was asked about inerrancy. Is the Bible inerrant? Is it, word for word, that kind of thing? And she said, oh, it's much truer than that. And I want to be willing to take in things I don't understand and that I can't totally find the path through and let them soak in until I get to the layer that goes, oh, it's much truer than that. Because I think that's true of each of our lives too. You know, that if we're eternal, like I believe we are, because of how God created us, then the layers are unending.
Yeah.
So I try to look at hardship, going back to your question, or trying to process feelings as just a tip of another iceberg and see that as a beautiful thing. Like I am so infinitely deep. My well is infinite because of being created in the image of God, that to see processing emotions as maybe even fun or interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've used the illustration a few different times of, I think it's cross knitting. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
But, sometimes you look at the back of that and you're just like, this is all tangled up, makes no sense. Like, we're just very confusing. Cross stitch. There we go. Sorry. And so, that's what it looks like. But then you flip it around and you see this beautiful picture,
organized,
right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we're always kind of looking at that side going, this makes no sense. How is all this going to work out? And we have a God who says, I can see both pictures and I'm with you in the process. And so,
and for us to be able to see that in others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here in Americus in Sumter County, which we talked a little bit about, and my introduction, or my first introduction to this place, of course, was Jim and Rosalind Carter, because they were heroes of mine. Even though we were born in a Reagan era, I got to know their work, their post-presidential work, and the Sunday school, all that stuff, and introduced me to the area. But what got me into the area was filming Plainspoken, which is a film about race relationships in the Deep South, set in Plains, set in Sumter County, trying to understand it through the lens of Black and white people here. And it takes, it all looks knotted up, right? Like you're talking about with the cross stitch. But it can be a picture, and we know the history in Americus and in Plains and in Sumter County in Southwest Georgia during the civil rights movements and the resistance to change that took place here that mirrored many places in the Deep South. It's not necessarily unique to here. Yet look at where we have come from, and that is part of building that picture. That's part of the mosaic of all those broken pieces that end up glued together to create this really, really beautiful, diverse picture that will continually need to be challenged and tested and looked at. But it is good to go, we weren't where we once were, and now let's keep moving to where we need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the next area that I wanted to talk about. I was going to ask you, though, as far as just kind of storytelling and your career, and you may have shared this in other places, but do you remember the first story or the first song that really just kind of was the moment you said, this is it? Like, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. Is there anything in particular that was like kind of the first thing?
That's a really big question. I remember a few different songs. I think about, I grew up around all kinds of music, from Motown to singer-songwriters of the 1970s. My brother, who drove me to school, who's 7-8 years older than me, in the early 90s, I was in elementary school, and he's driving me in a 66 Volkswagen Beetle he'd restored.
Let's go.
Playing Simon and Garfunkel and Peter, Paul and Mary and Bob Dylan and also Depeche Mode and whatever else he was into. But I remember hearing songs like To Make You Feel My Love. And I remember hearing James Taylor, them playing James Taylor, and shower the people you love with love. And then I remember hearing softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling. And it says, calling for you and for me. See on the portals, he's waiting and watching. And then so the depth of all of these lyrics kind of swirling around
Yeah.
In my mind and heart, I just couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't stop listening to lyrics and finding my own place in it at a very young age, being so moved by the marriage of a melody with the prose of a lyric, of a verse. Just, I think that's true for many, many people, where they call it their profession, where they make it their profession or not. But I knew that I needed to have a piece of that. I wanted to have a piece of that. I wanted to move somebody through that kind of submission to art.
Yeah. So did it start like on a napkin one day, or
No,
a piece of paper?
sexy.
You're just like, wow, yeah, this is it. Like this is what I want to share with the world.
No, I really didn't know how I was going to share music. I didn't know if I would be like a player I was a decent player on the keys, which is what I first learned on piano. And I thought maybe I'd end up being like a keys player on the road with some artist, or then I started finding my own voice and learning that I loved the process of recording and writing. And when I got out of college, I had an unexpected turn in a relationship that sent me, or that I chose then to go find some space. And I found that space in Wyoming. I've always loved hiking, backpacking. I've always loved the West. And there was a piano. I ended up meeting the folks who owned this lodge outside the east entrance of Yellowstone. They kind of gave me a place to lodge. I helped them do their books in their lodge. We exchanged, and there was a piano in an old lodge that was in the middle of their modern lodge. That was Buffalo Bill Cody's lodge around the turn of the 20th century, so around 1900. And there was an old piano in it. They learned music was in my background. They gave me a key to it, said play it anytime you want. I went in there thinking there's no way in this non-insulated old building this thing is going to be playable. It was like perfectly in tune with itself, which felt like a very moment. And I began writing songs really for the first time for myself to share there, instead of thinking about other people and other artists and their artistry. That's when I really began to put my story and the stories that were adjacent to me down on paper. So that was a very pivotal moment in my, I guess, artistic career of finding my footing, my own story.
Do people ever ask you, hey, how do I find my voice?
Sure.
And how would you answer that?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to things we've talked about.
Yeah.
A willingness to know oneself. You can tell the art where, sometimes they may be tormented, souls of sorts. I don't think it has to go to that extreme, though, to be really in touch with your spirit. And I believe we're spiritual people. So I think to neglect that is to neglect access to our story. And because it neglects our connection to the whole story.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to just find their spaces of sanctuary, to get to know themselves, to be honest with themselves, and to start finding out how to put that on paper in a palatable way. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So you've made a career out of this, which is really amazing. And I've watched you've done podcasts before.
Sure.
And one of the things that I love is, you ask really good questions,
Thanks.
And I think that comes from just a state of wonder. You actually care. There's a genuine, I want to know more about you. So that obviously requires good questions, not just, hey, how's the weather?
Right.
All right. Well, we're done with this conversation. Do you feel like that took time for you to develop that wonder, good questions? Like how would you?
I remember one time when I was a kid, I don't know if this was morning time in the summer, my dad hadn't gone to work yet or what, but because I think it was Regis and Kathy Lee that was on, of all things, the apex of journalism.
That's right.
But Kathy Lee was interviewing somebody, and my dad said, she's not listening, which I don't know that that's her shtick.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, so to really draw out story of others, which I do love doing. You have to listen and then be inside the conversation. If I'm hosting something like a podcast or a streaming series or whatever I have my hands in, and I'm thinking about a line of questioning, sure, I need that because it may be a live series, or it may have a timestamp that we really need to stick to. So I'm going to have a plan.
Yeah.
But that script has to be ready to be thrown out. By being engaged in the conversation, people will tell you what the next question is in a lot of ways. Ironically, I have interviewed Kathy Lee many times now, and she's a great interview because I don't even have to, I even have to have a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I need one question and it'll go 1,000 different directions. But I always think about that when my dad said that, but that perks my ears to go, be interested, but I don't think Kathy wasn't interested, and I don't think other people are interested, but don't just, you're really the servant personality rather than the dominant personality there to kind of, yes, you're in control, but you're being willing to be engaged in the moment.
Yeah. I think that's probably, one of the things we talk about here all the time is what does it mean to be a next level neighbor? And that idea is really just to be the good Samaritan, right? That's the next level neighbor, that the person that goes beyond.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're trying to figure out, man, in order to do that, I have to be present.
Right.
I have to be present, like physically, but also need to be present in our conversations. Allow that person to know there's nothing else that I need to do right now.
Right.
I'm here.
Right.
And that's what's so unique about what we need to get back to is when we're slowing down enough to actually be present with one another. Well, it just does something.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think it's definitely a hinge for all of us, no matter what scenario we're in. You're hitting very much on something that President Carter often brought up in his Sunday school lessons. And there was a story that he told when he was defeated for the Democratic nominee for the governorship in 1966, before he won for governor in 1970. And he was beat by a staunch segregationist. Lester Maddox is a famous segregationist in Georgia. He owned a chain of chicken restaurants, and he would chase out black people with a pickaxe handle. He was very demonstrative in his stance and his prejudice against black people. And of course, President Carter, who was just Jimmy Carter at the time, was thinking he was coming in here to kind of lead the South in a new direction, which he eventually did. And so he felt a total, dark night of the soul, a loss of spiritual direction, kind of a despair with God. And his sister was a very famous evangelist and kind of a faith healer, a really interesting, one of the first people in American culture that popularly so married pop psychology and Christian spirituality. And so she came down to Plains, Ruth Carter Stapleton, and had a powwow with him, walked around with them, listened to him, and said, okay, basically pull up your bootstraps and go serve somebody. Go think about somebody else. You were not the savior of the world. I am not the savior of the world, right?
Yeah.
And so he volunteered to go do some pioneer missions trips, which was a part of the Baptist culture at the time. And he was assigned, he and another pastor, a Cuban-American pastor named Eloy Cruz, were assigned to this immigrant community in Pennsylvania to witness their Christian faith to them. And Pastor Cruz was super easygoing about it, was able to just relate to pure strangers, instantly become lifelong friends. And so President Carter asked him, or Jimmy Carter asked him, what the secret to his relational success was. And he thought for a second, and he recounted this many times in his books and in the Sunday school lessons. I included it in one of the Sunday school lessons in that book because I think it's so profound. Pastor Cruz said, Senior Jimmy, you must only have two loves in your life at any given point in time, one for God and one for the person in front of you right now. And what that means is presence. That's exactly what you're dialing in. It seems too simple.
Yeah.
It seems to answer that profound question of how do I love my neighbor? How do I get along with my neighbor? How do I like my neighbor? How do I respect my neighbor? Really just be present with them in this moment, because I think we've gotten so obsessed with our own ideas and thoughts about what we think about abortion, what we think about marriage, what we think about gun control, what we think about Donald Trump, our politics, our religion, it all, pardon the pun, it all trumps our ability to be with another human being, and then to learn to love someone, you have to be in the moment with them. So I think it's a very Christian ideal, but I happen to think the purest Christian ideals are human ideals. They are the best, healthiest options for how we interact as human beings. And so,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about I've said it a few different times, but when we begin to just put people in categories, it's very easy when you categorize someone to demonize someone, because then they just become a group. They don't really become an individual with their own thoughts. And when you have conversations, you'll recognize, well, we disagree here, but the core of what the questions that we're really asking are the same.
Right.
Like, we want the same thing. We just have a different way of getting there. So if we can figure out what that thing is, we can actually have a lot of commonality. And so but it takes questions, good questions, to get there. And I think that we are, as you said yourself, I mean, when we're not safe with who we are, then what you're expressing to me feels like I have to defend it because now I don't feel safe, but I can feel safe and let you share. And people don't know that you can do that at the same time. And I think there's a beautiful thing, because again, you've made yourself, I know who I am. So because I know who I am, you can share whatever. It doesn't have to affect me, but I want to get to know you through that.
And
so
even deeper than I know who I am, I'm sure of this fact that I am valued. I have worth, innate worth and value, which I think is what you mean by who I am. But my assurance that I am okay because I was created good out of love allows me then to interact out of love and to do what you're saying, to see that other person as also a person who is worthy of love, of value, that can't be taken away from them, and even our disagreements on such temporal things, it's so interesting how big we have made certain things in our culture.
Where do you think that stems from? I mean, is it?
Oh, it's all fear.
Okay.
I mean, that's it may seem like a pat answer, but fear is the thing that drives the wedge. And I believe that, not in a conspiratorial way, that's not really my thing, but I do think marketing people are smart. And I think if you can elicit fear, you can get someone on board with whatever your antidote to that fear is. But there is no antidote to fear. I mean, what are we fearful of anyway? Like, we're all on the same train. We're going to die. Yeah. And whatever our belief is about that, I don't fear death because I don't believe that's the end game. But it is also something I've never experienced, so that creates a little anxiety around it. But we're all on the same path. And so, which is not existential, it's actually imbues our life with so much meaning and allows us to get to, while we're worried about A, B, and C that I see on my Insta story, we've been given the keys to unlock cages that go way deeper than anything that's being fed to me on social media or anything that I may be researching and finding on my own. But we love to be, our human nature, I think, just loves to be a part of drama. I think it loves to, I think we love to be on edge. I don't know if that helps us feel alive or something. But we like to be afraid. And I just don't get it. I just was not taught to be afraid of anybody. I don't, if you can be sitting across from me, sharing anything, the most bizarre revelation you have about your life. And I just, when we talk about people, we try to legislate things about groups of people that if I'm trying to legislate things about groups of people I don't have any experience with, then I need to stop. I need to stop in my tracks and I need to go discover their experience. I am not afraid of a trans person because I don't want my kid to be trans. Let's just say what it is. You know, I am not afraid of being infected by something that is not my proclivity. I'm not afraid to be in close proximity. You know, like we aren't a disease. Human beings are not a disease. We are a gift. And yes, we all express ourselves in different ways, and some are healthy and some are unhealthy. And hopefully every single one of us is open to the community around us, helping us find and discover what is healthy and what is not healthy. But I'm just not afraid of people and their quirks. And because I'm not afraid of me and my quirks. You know, like if you go into the corners of my mind, it gets way weirder than anything anyone presents with in this, you know, down the street. It's like, it's bizarre, you know? So I don't know if that is a good example or not. I just think test your fears. And you'll discover your prejudices, and then you can weigh out your prejudices. And I think each of us will find that we can actually overcome those prejudices and biases, and then we can become a good neighbor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I found, again, using this terminology has been helpful for me about, you know, we've gotten accustomed to transactional relationships instead of transformative relationships, which is, I think, what life and relationships should be about. And so if I'm only here to take what I can get from you, transaction, then you're a benefit to me until you're not. And whether that's because of a disagreement or because you no longer bring value to my network and my relationships, then we were only friends for the transaction. But if we can get to transformative, it means I'm here for you, whether you do anything for me or not. And that's the beautiful picture of this idea of this is what I feel like we were created for, created to experience. And why I love small towns, because I feel like it brings out the best of what that could be of, hey, we're here. I'm not going anywhere. You know, I'm not trying to go. I'm not trying to use you for anything. I'm just here. I'm always going to be here. I'll be your neighbor for the next 60 years. And hopefully we can learn how to get along. I mean, that's the mentality of where you can grow in that and be present and have these great long stories of generations. And so, I mean, I think that is part of, but learning how to be a better storyteller and asking really good questions, I think will help formulate some of these practices. I think for all of us to say, hey, how could I be a better neighbor? Sometimes it's just ask really good questions, you know, be engaged, you know, be aware of what's going on. If you see balloons on a mailbox, it means something, you know, go and ask, you know? And so like I've mentioned before, like our neighborhood in Albany didn't do Halloween. And so we got dressed up. And we started knocking on our neighbors' doors and saying trick or treat and doing reverse Halloween and giving them candy. I mean, that's just, we just want to meet people. We want to talk to people. So, you know, finding ways to be present. And they were really appreciative of that, you know, and we're Happy Mother's Day. And so we walked around and, you know, single moms and things like that. We just loved on people in our neighborhood. And so, you know, finding ways to pay attention to the little things, because people are like, man, you're paying attention. That means you're present, which is really, really great. So, well, let's talk a little bit about Plainspoken and this book. I know we've mentioned it a few different times. We're talking about storytelling. We're talking about why Plains. I mean, I know you've talked a little bit about Jimmy Carter and President Carter, but I mean, you could have gone many different routes. Why was this so intriguing to you? Then tell us a little bit about both of them. Yeah,
my journey to Plains was like many other people's, and that was through the influence of Jimmy and Rosalind Carter. I first learned or really resonated with some of Jimmy Carter's story when I read An Hour Before Daylight, which was a book that was published when I was in college, around the time he was winning the Nobel Peace Prize. And there was really some things that were taking traction in the mainstream about his humanitarianism. But An Hour Before Daylight is about his growing up on the farm, his dad's farm, his family's farm, in archery, which is just, now is not really a community, but was a community just on the outskirts of Plains. And the book was really about his relationships. Sure, it was about a different era in time, before electricity, before running water, the workings of a farm, which is interesting for our modern era to think back on that and to think of a president who came from that. But it really was about the relationships between black and white people, because outside of his immediate family, the majority of the folks out on the farm were sharecroppers and tenant farmers, and they were black. And those people became some of the most influential people throughout his life. He would point back to a handful of those people being those sharecroppers and tenant farmers who were all black, being some of the most influential people in his life. That was just fascinating to me for a young white boy in the Deep South in the 1920s and 30s, where the law of the land, of course, was segregation. Of course, we know that his mother, Miss Lillian, who was a nurse in the region, was always progressive in racial relationships. Her stances were very integrationist in a time where that wasn't popular. And I actually think, I often tell people, they say, well, how have Jimmy and Rosalind influenced Plains or shaped Plains? And I would say, well, Plains first shaped them. And that includes people like Miss Lillian. Here in Sumter County, it can be easy to not want to talk about race relationships, even though we still are predominantly black and white. Of course, we have the influence of different ethnic backgrounds and nationalities and all that now too. But it can be easy not to want to talk about it. But I think what's so beautiful about it is it has always had within its fabric a challenging the status quo around race relationships. So all of that kind of drew me in. I got on the internet and researched really Jimmy Carter and Plains. It wasn't Jimmy Carter in the Carter Center or Jimmy Carter in the Guinea Worm or Jimmy Carter in the White House. It was Jimmy Carter Plains. And I learned that you could come to Plains, go to Sunday school. I mean, you had to go through Secret Service, but you could go to Sunday school in a small A-frame church, at Maranatha Baptist that might hold 250 people shoulder to shoulder, and witness a former president of the United States teach from the ancient scriptures. What insights had he gleaned from this time-tested book. And so I thought, I'm going. I mean, I was just out of college. I grabbed two friends who were willing fools. They had no idea what they were getting into. And we drove down from Nashville, and I was kind of hooked from the beginning. You had to stay for church. Many people in this area know all this, experienced all of this way before I did. Had to go to church to then take a picture with them, and church is a very traditional church. And so I fell in love then, but it wasn't until 2018 when I came back into town on a whim. I was on a shoot down in Marco Island, or somewhere in Florida. Hurricane was coming and never came, but we all evacuated and were going our separate ways. I rented a car, driving slowly back to Nashville with some days off, saw Plains on the map, stopped again. At that point in time, I really got to meet the people of Plains and the Carters in a non-event, non-crowd setting for the first time. I began to then explore the park services over a few days, talk to people in town, and began to learn again about this really poignant conversation that is still ongoing in Plains and in this region around race. So that introduced me to the documentary, Plainspoken, which was on PBS for a good while and is now moving to another platform. And then I moved, John. I was not looking to move away from Nashville, but at first I bought a little house. I mean, it was just a kind of miracle thing that there would be this little house that I could afford on the main drag, and thought I'll fix up this house and I'll visit. This will give me a chance to visit whenever I want. Other people can use the house. And thought my life would still largely be in Nashville. And I'd come down and I'd come down and I'd come down. And then eventually it was actually my friends and my community and my family, many in Nashville, who first pointed me in the direction to say, I think you should try out living in Plains. Maybe they wanted to get rid of me, but I think they saw in me what was happening. And so I tried it out and I haven't looked back. And I'm in love. I hope they're in love too. You'll have to ask them. But that includes this greater, wider region. A lot of people would ask me, and I'll mention the book and how that came about. But a lot of people ask me, especially in the field I'm in, a very metropolitan kind of base field, loud lights, all that kind of stuff, and artistic, how are you going to relate to anybody? And I was like, you have no idea. I mean, there are people way freakier than I am down in, I think about like Passaquan, there's just so much energy of art and free-spirited and free-minded thinking that is really beautiful and still checked by community, accountability of community. And so it produces this really artistic place. When I think about Americus and I think about Plains and many of the surrounding areas, Ellaville and Leesburg, all these places. So I did end up becoming a member of Maranatha, that is my home church, and found a bunch of tapes in the library and CDs and DVDs of President Carter's Sunday school lessons, and just realized they had never been fashioned in a really kind of palatable way like this. So I went through hundreds of them. There are thousands recorded, and picked out 15, which comprise 15 chapters, spread out throughout the decades that he taught publicly, the 70s through the last year, 2019. In the 70s, he was teaching as President of the United States at the church he was a member at, First Baptist Church of the City of Washington, D.C. Compiled them in there, wrote introductions to the decades to kind of contextualize what were the Carters doing at home or around the world that reflected their ideals that they were teaching. And then Jason Carter, his oldest grandson, did an afterword. Barbara Brown Taylor, a wonderful author and priest, did the forward, and that became More Than a President Sundays with Jimmy Carter. Yeah. And now what's thrilling is I get to go share it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, the book tour it just released in October, so I'm just experiencing this, but I'm so excited. And there's more dates in the spring. People seem to be really intrigued. I think they're intrigued by the humility that is required for a formerly of the free world, someone who has ascended to arguably the highest and most powerful position in the world, to commit essentially every other Sunday. He was teaching at Maranatha at least half the Sundays of the year, to commit to such a kind of benign. I mean, what's in it for him? You talk about transactional relationships. There really was no benefit to his career. It was something that I think he had to do, honestly, he was grounded by, but he committed to it. And I think people in our current era are interested and always intrigued by people of power who exercise humility. So, but as I've been able to go around the country and share about it, I get to share about now where I'm now from. I get to share about Plains. I get to share about Sumter County. I get to share about Southwest Georgia, because people are still floored that he and Rosalind made this, continue to make this their home till their final days.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and we, thank you so much for the copy of this book.
And
I'm interested too, because I mean, again, you're a storyteller. Why these particular, what you're doing is you're capsulating, and then you're making sure that it expands these particular stories. This story, what is it about him that says, I want to make sure? There are a lot of people who have done Sunday services,
of course,
preached sermons. What is it about him that you're saying, this is why this needs to not stay on a cassette somewhere? It needs to get out.
I think there's the natural intrigue of a historical figure and the preservation of that, doing something so unusual. I think that probably will never be replicated. But also because in the content of his teachings, he was always drawing out. Someone asked me, an interviewer asked, was there any through line that I discovered throughout the decades and the lessons? And my answer would be yes. It's a challenging of the us versus them mentality. He was always challenging himself first, and then the class that was there, to whoever us is and whoever them is, that is to be tested, because that we're not created in a divide or in a caste system or with certain privileges. We were all created very equal in a very rich and generous way. Not that we're all created on the bottom floor and we have to find our way up, but that we're kind of created to be empowered with everything we need. And so to test those biases, test those prejudices, I think, it feels like we get through a certain era. You look back in the civil rights era of the 1950s and 60s, and I'm sure people who lived through that thought, once getting over, or not getting over, but learning and getting through and coming to some new ways of being and living together through the conflict of the civil rights, thought, okay, we've kind of done that now. Now we can move forward.
Yeah.
And we find ourselves in new places of prejudice, bias, someone with an upper hand, someone with a lower hand, keeping that in its way. And so it must be our human nature I think survival is a bit our human nature, and we'll do whatever we have to survive. President Carter in his lessons was always challenging that through many different passages of Scripture, different stories of Scripture, different characters in Scripture.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, this is just as you're explaining it, I'm like, man, I could do that. I mean, there's 15 of them. I could read through that. That'd be great. And I think, we talk a lot on this podcast about how, currently what we're doing, and then kind of what does this look like in the future? Like where is this all leading? And we're looking at places like Americus, Plains, Sumter County. I try to ask it kind of in three categories. I basically say, what are the ingredients of a small town that makes it unique, that makes it special? Like you say, maybe some people will say, well, Americus Plains, what is it? And you get to share that story and help them to understand that there are things that make small towns so wonderful and so beautiful. We talked a little bit about pace. We talked a little bit about presence. We talked a little bit about just being known, which is, again, something that's a really great gift if we can find it.
Yes.
But also, I think about the future. I would say, what are some things for a community like this in Sumter County in the future? What are some things that we can start doing? What are some things that we probably should stop doing? And what's the one thing that we can never stop doing when you think about the future?
Okay, well, I don't want to be the preacher, you know. I think something to start doing that has already begun. I mean, there's lots of things that you could put in these, but I love the history of this area. Some of that includes the Carters, but there's a lot of deep history in this area. You go to Koinonia Farms, and of course the upstart of Habitat for Humanity. But I think some of the darker history maybe is actually really is worth exploring or worth preserving, not because we want to live in dark spaces or that we want to live in a space of shame and beat ourselves up for something we once did or way we once thought or ideals we once espoused. But I think the contrast is really beautiful, and we don't want to take the energy and the contrast out of the human story. So when I think about, I've been learning all about how America specifically was involved in the civil rights movement. There was actually something, it's called the Americus movement between 1961 and 1963. Within that, I believe it was called the Sumter County movement. And these were people who were working towards voting rights and changes in education and educational opportunities for African Americans. And so this was very progressive things happening. Was there a lot of resistance to it? Yes. But, the very interesting history of MLK Jr. being imprisoned right here at the courthouse. Now, that was after the Albany protests, and which were somewhat of a failed experiment. But, and yes, I know some people don't like to recount it because he called the sheriff at the time the meanest man in the world. But then I remember Andrew Young, a pronounced civil rights leader here in Georgia, who was mayor of Atlanta at one point and ambassador to the UN under Carter, who was good friends with Carter, but he remembers the first time he met Carter, and Jimmy Carter was talking about how Fred Chappelle, that sheriff, was one of his good friends. And he was like, wait a second, how does this all play out? Well, it plays out in a community, things get tested and they evolve and they shift. And we have the benefit here of not having to adhere like a lot of metropolitan areas do to some kind of inure politically correct terminology. We're actually going through human relationships. Yeah. When I filmed the documentary, a lot of people, I would ask questions that were very politically correct driven or said, do you realize how this looks or how this is? And they were like, wait a second, that is, and I'm talking white and black people said, that is not how this is. and gave me a deeper, more nuanced example of this community and area. So
yeah,
I would love to see that continue to be explored and preserved. There's some beautiful things going on with the National Park Service and the they call it the Colored Hospital because that's what it was called in Americus, and the church, the chapel. I think it's the historic Campbell Chapel across the street. I love seeing stuff like that preserved. So again, I think it enlivens our current presence to have all of that dark and light working its way out.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's something for the future.
Is there anything that we need to stop doing?
Stop doing.
And then is there anything that we can never stop doing?
Okay. Stop doing would be, well, small towns, because I've been a part of them much of my life, small towns have a way of digging into some pretty deep conflict over benign matters or over small things. Maybe small towns, small conflicts, that's what happens. But it can get out of hand. I've seen a lot in being in this region, people who stop talking to one another and they live just a block from each other who were deep and dear friends. And, I know some of the details of those conflicts. And in my observation, my perspective, that's not worth losing relationship. I think it's easy to kind of also generationally to, and this is a small town thing that I think there's some beauty to this, but it also has to be weighed out where how things were done. Things have to transition. Things have to evolve. Things have to, if we want to move forward, if we want Americus to still be a viable place to live and to thrive and to be in community in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, even past you and me, same with Plains, same with any region, Sumter County. So we have to be willing to loosen our grips on what it is how we think things should run. And just because generations of my family did it this way, doesn't mean that's how it's going to need to be done in the future for this place to survive. And I think most of us that come from small towns or invest in small towns want them to survive. I think we're all unified on that. Yeah. It's just each of us getting out of our own way to let it move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
However anyone translates that, great.
Yep.
And then things that we cannot stop doing, being freaky is what I would say. Small towns are freaky, and it's great. It's like everyone. There is more space to fly your freak flag, let it wave, and still have a space of belonging. A seat at the table. That is something small towns, which is a little bit of the porch sitting mentality. It's small towns have the ability to be sanctuary, to be safe for people who are marginalized in parts of our country. I actually think small communities, strangely, I don't think metropolitan areas would say it this way, but I do think small communities have the ability to really be a safe haven for people who find them in unprotected spaces within our country. So to continue to be, we have to continue to be a safe space, Yeah. And I think we are. Yeah. And I think we can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about when you talked about, what's it like to stop doing. And you talked a little bit about, just really not, I try to use it in the form of, what I would say like inflation, right? Like your dollar is $1 now, but with inflation, it's going to be less of $1 in 10 years from now. And so though we don't want to evolve, we're just trying to keep up with inflation. We want the same value 10 years from now. So in order to do that, we have to add a few things. We have to bring some elements in, not because we want to change the value. We just want to make sure the value stays along with the time.
That's a really great way to put it.
And so if we can get to a place where we can say, we're not here to try to become Atlanta. That's not what we want. We want it to be Americus. We want it to be Plains. But it won't be Plains if we can't add value to it as we go forward.
Right.
So how do we do that? And we don't have to do it like any other place, but it would be great to know how we could do that in a very unique way. And I think the best way of doing that is to find out what your city what's the identity of your city? It's like a person.
Mm-hmm.
If you know who you are and you're comfortable with who you are and you value who you are, you can express yourself to other people
Mm-hmm.
in a very attractive way.
Mm-hmm.
And you're unique, but it's still you. And so
Mm-hmm.
if our city can come around those shared values and say, hey, this is who we are, we share this with others, then people will see it as a valuable thing over time. And maybe they'll come, they'll invest a little bit, and maybe they won't stay, but it'll keep us kind of stable. So
I 100% agree with that. And we have a draw here, so we can be secure in that there is a vibrancy, there is a resonance in this land that draws people in. Like you said, it could be for short term or long term. So we don't have to fear, like you said, expressing ourselves and moving forward.
We
don't have to hoard something that is currently working or that has worked in the past. We don't have to hold on to that and grip onto it too tightly, because the fabric of this place, the foundation of it, the color of it will continue to expand,
Absolutely. And I mean, as people come in, the reason why we're staying is because we do like the place. That makes sense. It's we like it.
I totally do.
I don't necessarily want it to change X, Y, and Z. I actually like it. That's why I'm here. I just want to make sure that this stays for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Totally. Some people asked me when I decided to actually move to Georgia, get my driver's license, sell my house in Tennessee, be full-time here. Are you sure? Some people said, well, and what about when the Carters pass away, because some things will change, or what about, because I knew that was my first draw in to it, or what about this or that? And I said, no, it's what you said. I was like, I'm here. I love it. I love it with all of its good and all of its difficult. That's part of being family. That's part of being known. And because I crave being known, and because I came here to find spaces where I could know and be known, that comes with all the beautiful, and it comes with a lot of the broken. And I'm here for it. I would rather be known than live some benign surface existence where at least I don't feel too much and go home at night, go to sleep, and then one day die alone, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather be in the context of people with all the challenges that presents.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So one of the things that we ask kind of as we kind of end through the podcast is, we've talked about, not everybody can be such a great storyteller and write amazing books and, is super talented musician.
Plenty of people can,
right?
but sure. Okay.
But what are some very practical things? We've mentioned several of these, but if someone were to walk away from this conversation and say, you know what, I want to become a next level neighbor. I want to become a person who is not just in transactional relationships, but I want to seek those. What would you encourage them? What are some very practical things they could wake up tomorrow and just be thinking through and processing that would just be helpful for them, so that we can continue to see places like Americus stay? And
I would say initiate the invitation and then listen. And then be willing to listen, make space to listen. So initiate the invitation, meaning, I'm not an extrovert, but I want people to be welcome into my home. I want to provide a safe space for people to be themselves. So maybe that, I don't know what that looks like for each person. Not every person loves having people in their home. It may just be their porch. It may be their backyard. It may be, hosting a table at trivia night, or Pat's, I went to Bluegrass on Tuesdays recently. I was the first time, and I'm just like, this is amazing. Yeah. So it may be reserving a table for 10 people and inviting people, specific people you've always wanted to get to know something about their story. Whatever it is, I think the invitation thing, it can be easy for us to all find our little segments, whether that's through where we go to church, or maybe it's our neighborhood, or maybe it's, we're in Sumter Players and we're the theater types, or whatever we are, to kind of not keep broadening, our circle to include others. So just making space for people's. There's a lot of practical ways to do that.
Yeah,
it's just motivating ourselves.
Yeah,
it's hard sometimes. Sometimes all I want to do is have a day where no one expects anything from me.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And
we definitely need more days than that.
That's just not the way we live. So
yeah. I love that. And I think, I'm a pretty, like I said, a pretty extroverted person. So I love to find introverts and be like, just come hang out with me. I'll bring all the people. And then you just pick out of the one you want, we just, whoever you feel comfortable with.
Frightens me as an introvert. I want to have control as an introvert of what's this going to look like.
Yeah, you can pick out of all the friends that, that I'm bringing into the space. But yeah, that's, but it is, and that's why I love, community effort too, of just finding people that kind of want the same values and the hopes and dreams and say, hey, I can bring this to the table, because I can bring people to the table, but I won't be able to remember their birthdays. I won't understand exactly, certain aspects of their lives, but man, there are some amazing people that I know that I'm like, if they could just meet these people,
sure,
you're going to find an amazing friend, so just kind of working together to see some of those things transpire,
so maybe that's the other side of the coin, is accept the invitation as well.
Yeah. Be very invitational and but also, get some rest, just enjoy it. Enjoy life, for sure. I think that's very helpful. Again, there's so much to glean from people, getting back to this idea of wonder. Don't assume that people, even with the first 2 or 3 layers of questions. There's so much more there, and you could just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and going, man, this is so unique. It's so beautiful. It's not what I thought it was, because there's so much more to it. And so, and I think people want to be able to share their stories and try to get that out. I always say that one of the reasons why we express anger so much is because we feel like we're not heard. And when we're not heard, we get angry and we begin to express ourselves stronger or louder or more aggressive. And so, because when we don't feel like we're heard, then we feel like we're isolated, and now we're not in a safe place, and now we've got to gain control. So
that's right.
So it's really, really good to say, hey, make sure, that you're listening, that you're growing in that, because it is hard. We've lost that. It's a lost art, right? Listening is an art, lost art. So, but just getting back to that, and again, maybe it's just, starting with yourself and making sure that you know how to listen to yourself.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of peace, to listen. If, like you said, if you feel heard and I feel heard, then we are more likely to live in some element of peace, even having some disagreements or not seeing things exactly the same. But that genuine respect, of being heard, I don't know. It's a great, huge bridge.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So what we do at kind of the end is what we do, these rapid fire questions. So you probably have some of these, you know what's happening. So yeah, you don't have to go into a full explanation. I like to have the right answer.
So that's why I hate this.
Okay. All right. So you can give various answers. You don't have to, if it's just a one or done, you can say, no, I have multiple answers for that.
Okay.
But, all right. So let's do some of the easy ones first, right? So, if you got a chance to go on vacation, are you going to the beach? You going to the mountains? What do you do? Mountains. All right. Is there a particular place that you would like to go, a dream destination that you haven't been, or a place that you have been, you want to go back to?
Oh, I love New Mexico. Any chance I can go.
Okay. How many times have you been?
Many times. I don't even have a count.
Okay.
Yeah, since I was a kid. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you have a go-to comfort food? Is there just something you love?
Chili dogs.
Chili dogs.
Yeah. Every time.
Okay. All right.
And I've never been to Monroe's.
Yeah. What?
Well,
all right, we're going to Monroe's.
Please take me. That's where your expert can. The pink hot dogs just freak me out. So I need it slathered. I've never had a pink hot dog in my life.
Okay.
The real they're
really
big
great.
guts and stuff.
Yeah.
So
they'll cover it if you want to.
I know. That'll work.
Okay. All right. Sweet or savory?
I would say
or none.
Sweet.
Okay. Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. What's do you watch movies? And if so, what's the last movie you watched and loved?
Oh, okay.
You said I've seen a lot, but
yeah, I do like film. The last movie I actually watched is one I had seen before.
Okay.
But it is maybe one of my all-time favorite movies, and it's called The Family Stone.
Okay.
And it's actually based around holiday time. It's probably from 2006 or 7.
Okay.
Diane Keaton, the guy that played Coach on TV.
Okay.
Luke Wilson, Sarah Jessica Parker. I mean,
Good cast.
Rachel McAdams. Oh, it's incredible. But the content of it is a bit sad. It's definitely tinged with sadness, but very, very poignant.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
To not do rapid fire questions.
Yeah. Thank you, extrovert. Great job. All right. I'll give you one more.
No,
this
you
is
can
more
get
of
it as visual.
All right. This is more
I'm
of a
here
deeper
for it.
one.
This is humility.
If you could have dinner with any 3 people, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh.
And why?
Living 3 people. Okay.
Living or dead?
Yes. I would love to have dinner with George W. Bush.
Okay.
I have met him a couple times. I just think he's a fascinating figure because I'd love to talk to him about the whole era of war on terror and getting into that and what really was that about, but not so much from political. Like also he's such a post-president, such an easygoing guy, generous in nature. I just kind of want to know how he ticks for some reason.
Yeah.
I'm from Texas too.
Yeah.
So he was owner of the Texas Rangers when I was growing up. And I mean, he's a fascinating figure in a lot of different layers for me. I mean, I adore Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, so I would put him right up there again.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter. I would take as many dinners as I could with them. And I mean, from a spiritual sense, I know what I could say. The thing is, I don't want to die yet. So that's not who I want to have dinner with yet. I know we're kind of superseding all that in imagination, but yeah. And we're talking about in this moment.
Yeah.
Like this could change throughout my life.
Yeah. I'm not gonna just record it and then keep it up and be like, all right, you know.
I think then it would be my friend in Germany, Toby.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't get to, he got to come to the States last year. He's in the podcast world and just very interesting figure that I would love to know more about. Nigerian fellow that lives in Germany, which is where you were born.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I've never really visited Germany. So it's kind of it's kind of a killing 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah. All right. I love that. All right. What about favorite season? Do you have a favorite season of the year?
Yeah, fall. I wish fall was 7-8 months of the year. 100%. I mean, I'm a sad sap, of course.
All right. All right. As an artist, who is your favorite artist right now that you just have really enjoyed, whether they're new or they've been around for a while? Like, kind of, who do you listen to when you hit the play button? You're like, I'm looking forward to.
I mean, there's a lot, but I love and have gotten back into Roberta Flack.
Okay.
So Roberta Flack was a kind of neo-soul artist, actually discovered by Clint Eastwood, and she's a black singer-songwriter in Greenwich Village, kind of during the Dylan eras and stuff. Very interesting woman. She was a music educator, teacher, and was discovered and became huge in the 70s and the 80s. She died recently last year, earlier this year, but yeah, she's the original. Killing my pain with his fingers, killing my da da da.
Yeah,
da killing me softly. But there's the first time ever I saw your face. But she covers a Carole King song called "Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow," and it's all about how beautiful today is and tonight is, but will you still love me tomorrow? It's the saddest song. And her vocal.
Is that on your sad
album? Like 3
Okay.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 3 different arrangements of it. But yeah, her ability to phrase a lyric. So I'm captivated by the technique of it as a musician, but then also just great songs and great artists.
Okay. All right. 2 more.
Okay.
Share a fun fact about yourself that many people may not know.
Well, that's private.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Many people, not that they probably would know if they spent some time with you.
Well, I almost died when I was a toddler because I was suffocating on lifesavers. my mom had entrusted me with more than one in my hand as a way to grow, but only eat one at a time, all this stuff. My mom freaked out. She picked me up. Our neighbor was a retired nurse. She was running over there. She tripped, she fell, she threw me, and then she picked me up and was crawling to the nurse and to the neighbor. And I was fine because I had ejected it when she threw me on the ground. But anyway, I don't know if that's really a fun fact, but it's interesting.
It's an interesting fact for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you won't have to indulge any more in that.
Okay.
My introvert friend, I should never have asked that
No,
question.
no, that's okay.
Yeah. Tell us your deepest secret. It's like, no, that's not what
I'd probably more go for that.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Last one. Do you have a favorite inspirational quote or just a motto just to kind of lead us out?
Well, I kind of hate
that's
that.
Right now, or maybe.
Yeah, I kind of hate who it is, not because I hate them or their writings. I don't love C.S. Lewis writings. I cannot get into them, and I think he's a go-to, quote for people of all kinds of people.
Yeah,
and so I don't want to be generic. I hate to be, that way. But when he speaks of humility, he says humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less.
Yeah.
And I just think that would be a good subscription for all of us.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm a C.S. Lewis fan. I am.
Good for you.
Some of his writings.
I can't do it.
Yeah, it's good.
But you're a pastor. It makes sense.
Yeah.
You're thinking in these little riddles and layers.
Yeah.
Now, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and the fantasy aspect, yes. But Screw Tape Letters and Great Divorce, I'm just like,
Yeah.
And I'm smart.
Yeah. Yeah. He's I think one of the things that he taught me most in regards to conversations, even in evangelism, is this is not about who's right and who's wrong. It's, have we thought deep enough about this?
For sure.
And I was like, man, if I'm going to be sharing and talking, and I want to ask those kind of questions, like, hey, that sounds great, but is there something deeper? And I just love that, because I think that is a personal journey for people, instead of you're on the wrong line. Just, have we thought about this deep enough? And I love that. So anyone that encourages that, that's
true. In his writing, he's not suggesting a solution.
Yeah.
At least a line of solutions.
Yeah.
He's actually right. He's advocating for going down the elevator shaft.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's see what other levels we've got.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can respect that.
Yeah. So, well, Andrew, this has been great. We've met a few different times.
Yeah.
We see each other at the coffee
around.
shop. We're going to see. I'm taking you to Monroe's. It's going to happen.
Okay.
And so we'll schedule that. No, we will. We'll schedule that.
Okay.
And so, thank you so much. Again, I'm so happy about just the way that you're sharing stories, who you're sharing about. I hope that you can do both of getting a chance to get this out more, but also just have some time of rest, especially during the holiday season. Just really great. So
thank you.
Very, very thankful for an opportunity for us. And maybe we can do this again in the future.
Would love to. Anytime.
Would love to hear a little bit of an update about how things are going.
I would love it.
Thank you so
John.
much, Andrew. All right, man.
Okay.
That's awesome.
We did it.